What's been the reaction in the US to President Trump's announcement of the ceasefire?
Well, Roz, the reaction to the announcement was a mixture of relief from Trump supporters who were concerned that America may be getting involved in another decades-long entanglement in the Middle East. There was relief that it appeared that this was a one-and-done strike by the United States on the weekend against the Iranian nuclear sites. There was some skepticism, particularly from the left of politics in the United States, that Donald Trump just posting about a ceasefire on social media does not a peace agreement make. So there's been a lot of interest in the last hour or two counting down to the first deadline in the ceasefire outlined by President Trump on Truth Social earlier today. There was an increase in missiles coming from Iran into parts of Israel and the West Bank. We've seen those images coming out of Beersheba where there have been fatalities amongst Israelis there. Again, a ballistic missile strike from the Iranians. The first stage of that deadline now having passed for a ceasefire to begin, and there are already reports that Iran has continued to send missiles towards Israel. So whether this ceasefire is breaking down before it begins, or whether in fact just because of the attempted staged nature of this, there will be a final flurry before ultimately there is a ceasefire across the board, remains to be seen. So for now, a lot of interest. It's past midnight in Washington, D.C., and a lot of people are keeping a close eye on their news and social media feeds to see what is going to happen next. But it was a strange situation, Roz, in the last couple of hours as President Trump has been tweeting and truthing out paintings of himself as a peacemaker with the American flag and basically patting himself on the back, going on something of a virtual victory lap, that the missiles have kept flying. So we'll just see in the hours ahead what to make of all of that.
Okay, but John, how central to the ceasefire negotiations do you think the United States has been? How much power and influence do they have here?
Well, if President Trump is to be believed, Roz, both the Israelis and the Iranians simultaneously came to him and said, "We want peace," and he said, "Right, let's have peace." The truth of the matter is probably a little more complicated than that. But at the end of the day, it was the astonishing strike power of those B-2 stealth bombers on the weekend and the devastation wrought on Iran's nuclear program by the bunker-busting bombs, as well as continued Israeli strikes and, of course, the Tomahawk cruise missile strikes from the American submarine offshore, have all added up to show that Iran is terribly weakened. It is essentially unable to defend itself from stealth weapons and indeed from ongoing Israeli raids, having lost control of their own airspace. So in a sense, they were bombed to this point and potentially bombed back to the negotiating table. We don't yet know for sure, of course, whether the United States and Israel have achieved all of their objectives, how far back they've managed to set the Iranian nuclear program. There's still some debate amongst analysts as to what can be claimed and what Iran may still have in reserve when it comes to centrifuges and highly enriched uranium that may have already been whisked away from those targeted sites and secreted away for possible future use.
John, thank you.